how would you describe an Orthodox approach to physical fitness, and how does this approach differ from the worldly approach? And they said, put another way, what are the practical Christian reasons to train?
Yeah, so like, one of the themes that I emphasize is stay ready so you don't have to get ready, right? So if something comes up, if there's a need at your house, if there's a need at your church, if there's a need with your family, your time of preparation is already over with. You either can perform or not perform. But I think staying ready is secondary really to the principle of being of service. So if you look at a lot of what we do as men for the people around us, it's being of service. What I don't like about traditional fitness, physique culture, and all that other stuff is it's really about creating the best physique for yourself and something that you want, and you're going to sit there and oogle yourself in the mirror, or you're going to post it online so you can get a bunch of likes from other dudes. That's very bizarre. Like, that whole culture is tends to be very neurotic, kind of borderline OCD in terms of food and calorie counting and body fat percentages and all these things. Like, it actually it forces people into doing bizarre things and cultivating almost like strange passions around fitness, which is not the purpose or the goal of fitness, right? The goal of fitness in our modern day is the fact that most of us live or are forced to work sedentary jobs, and we need a way to offset that so that it doesn't get us out of shape. I worked as a commercial roofer on roofs physically, after seminary. And at one point they gave me an office job, and like within 3 months of being in the office, I started getting fat. And I was like, I hadn't had to work out in years because I think at the time I could crank out like 24 pull-ups or something like that. I think I was like by far the strongest guy because I used to lift weights, but because I was just physically fit,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like 175 pounds. But I mean, I could work a 12-hour plus day and just keep going all day long. And then on top of it, had a lot of strength to body weight ratio and everything else. But I was constantly able to do stuff. And as soon as I got that office job, it was like I was eating. Part of the issue was I was eating like I was still roofing every day. So I was like eating basically double portions of everything at every meal. And then within 2 months, I just started getting fat. And then I was very embarrassed about this because I was like, I swore that I would never get fat because when I was growing up in high school, my dad was fat. And I just realized, look, I've got 5 sons. They look up to me, and I set the standard. When I was growing up and my dad was fat, I always I hated it. Like, I felt like my dad was out of shape. He couldn't do anything. He wasn't capable of doing anything. It was just like, it was for me as a young man. I was like, as a teenager, I was like, it's really pathetic. So I was like, I never want to set that as the standard for my own kids, especially for the fact that I have 5 sons. I want them to understand that the standard of a man is that he is physically fit. You don't have to be world class, right? Like, there's 2 different kind of things that we're talking about: general fitness and then being like at a competition level. But just as far as general fitness went, I started getting fat, and I was like, I don't want to be fat. It's embarrassing. It's obviously not attractive to my wife, and it's something that I swore to myself I wouldn't do. So immediately I hopped in, got a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu membership, started rolling Jiu-Jitsu again, and I was embarrassed. Like, I had really never been out of shape, but this was all in my kind of mid-30s or so. My metabolism wasn't what it used to be, and I was sitting around in an office, driving to and from work and being in an office. So I'm like sedentary 10 plus hours a day. Gabriel Chomos out in Michigan, shout out to Gabriel. I believe he just gave me a set of weights that he couldn't take or keep in his apartment or whatever.
Yeah.
And so then I'm going to start lifting in my basement again. So I would go down there and scream and blast metal and do whatever, and then lift, and then rolled Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then within a short period of time, like, I got back into shape, and I was like, I can never stop doing this because all of my jobs are sedentary from now on. That's how I make my money. But the point is that, like, the physical fitness emphasis, like, look, in a society of sedentary people, there's a couple things that are happening. Number one is we need to love and enjoy the body that God gave us without turning it into an idol, worshiping it, posting a bunch of selfies online, a bunch of flexing photos and whatever else nonsense. And number two is we need to use our manliness and strength in order to benefit the people around us. And so, you know, some of the stuff I post on Twitter with my brotherhood is, you know, projects in the last year. We installed a cupola on top of our church. I tore my adductor, man, on Saturday at that competition. And Sunday I was on the roof of the church, like trying to help and oversee installing the cupola box and the cupola on the roof. All right.
Love it.
Not smart at all. Like, but the point is like, we've done that. We poured concrete for a ramp at our church. We just built a bunch of benches last Sunday for probably 6-7 hours after liturgy so that we could put all new benches in the area. You know, we pressure washed the church. I mean, we've just done so many different activities. You know, we poured all the concrete and built a giant cross and put that in the front of our church, you know, using big 6x6 beams. So I built all the icon stands at my church. The point is like, look, there's lots of things that you can do in life when you're physically fit. And when you're not physically fit, you have to hire or get somebody else. You essentially have to subcontract to another man to do that. And that's just no bueno in my book. You know, you got to stay physically fit. That's what we're doing. And funny enough, you know, we were listening to the life of St. Paisios on the way to liturgy this morning because we celebrate the liturgy for St. Joseph the Hesychast, who's like very dear to our family. My son is named after him. And we were listening to St. Paisios, and he said there was a day where he had to do a bunch of field work. And St. Paisios was like a tremendous worker, right? And he said he didn't have, like, his brothers were not going to be able to show up, so he had to work extra hard and be diligent. And he said basically that day he did the work of 3 men by himself. And he's like just going at it. And that was one of the hallmarks. If you read the life of St. Paisios, one of the hallmarks of the life of St. Paisios was like, he was a tremendous worker. He wasn't super big. He wasn't super buff or anything like that. He could just put in the work. He was super energetic and filled with a lot of love for people, and he would work hard. In fact, one of his criticisms in the pamphlet book that I have is he basically says the men that come visit the monastery, and this is back probably in the 80s or whatever, he goes like, they're kind of worthless. He's like, they're unfit for the married life and they're unfit for the monastic life. Like they can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And that was like his criticism with like, people have become lazy and not physically able. And and when you do that, like, you can't benefit anybody around you. So anyways, those are some of the practical implications. Again, practical stuff if people were to ask me is like, get a healthy body fat of over 10%. Don't try to get super lean. Don't try to get shredded. Don't try to post a bunch of selfies online. You know, do things that are good movements. I don't believe in functional strength. I think all that is nonsense. It's funny because when I was in seminary, that was one of the things that I did was I lift weights a lot, and because the life in the seminary was very sedentary, and it was fantastic for my mental health. And I remember there was a guy that I knew, his folks had a moving company. Mm-hmm. So I went to work for the moving company, and I don't know what I weighed at the time, probably 200 pounds, maybe 205. And the guys at the moving company were like, "Oh, you lift weights. Wait till you're actually moving." And then, dude, I was stronger than all of them. Like, it wasn't like there wasn't a carryover. Guys quickly figured out that I was way stronger than everybody else there. Yeah. So this notion that like you go spend time lifting weights in a gym, somehow that doesn't carry over to being strong and able to physically do stuff, you're nuts. Now, maybe if you're too big or you're not used to working, an 8 to 12 hour manual labor job, sure, you may have an acclimation period, but your acclimation period is going to be like a few days or a week. You know what I mean? It's not like a guy who's coming off the street who has no muscle, doesn't work out, and is trying to get in the trades. Those guys cannot do anything even at the beginning. Like I've seen this firsthand. Like they're not helpful.